why not?
Hi everybody, welcome to my virtual woolshed. Here we are today and it's a beautiful sunny day and I'm so excited because we're here with Tina Shaw and I'll just bring this right up so you can have a look. This is her new book which came out on the 21st of March this year in the middle of the pandemic, Tina. And do you want to just tell us about it? We'd love to hear. I was really interested in the cover, Ephemera, and this insect on the cover. I just wonder if you want to start off and tell us a wee bit about that.
The creature on the cover is a mayfly. So, and the genus of the mayfly is Ephemera, meaning because as an insect, it's very, very short-lived. And a lot of my book, well, probably the main theme of my book is that the world is ephemeral, and also because the mayfly is relevant to my book because it's a river-dwelling insect, and a lot of my book is set on the Waikato River. So yeah, it's basically about a group of people who travel up the Waikato River in a homemade kind of steamboat, and it's set in the future in New Zealand, and there's no electricity, no broadband, and we're completely cut off from the rest of the world.
And do you want to just explain why that happened? Because it's not a similar, well, it's a similar effect, but it's a different cause from what we have with this pandemic currently. It's almost spooky reading your book because of the parallels really with what's happening right now.
Yeah, what we've got now obviously is a biological virus, and in my book I use a computer system virus. So I thought about making my book based on a pandemic, and that would have been even stranger than I think what I've created. And basically I just wanted to have everything shut down, so there's no internet, no broadband, and I wanted to write a survivalist story, and
I think you've done that really, really well. I mean, I read the book in 24 hours and loved it. And you take a character, Ruth, who is a librarian who over many years has made her way to the top floor of the Auckland Library in the Gods, where they do at the research centre. And I've been up there and I know that really is the gods of the library world. And she seems such an unlikely character to take on what is really such an interesting and psychologically difficult and physically difficult trip up the river with a really interesting bunch of characters. And it's like they're in a bubble, and she's in a bubble with an ex-cop and a very unusual character, Akers. So maybe you'd like to tell us a wee bit about that.
You're right, actually. I hadn't thought of them as being in a bubble, but they really are. And Adebowale Akers, he's a Pākehā guy who was once adopted by an African brotherhood. So he's got this African name, and he's a really tough little nuggety guy. And he's basically built this steamship out of nothing. You know, like the chimney of it is made from old baby formula tins. And so there's him, and they all meet up at Mercer. And then there's Lance Hinckley, who's this dashing ex-police type person. And Ruth, of course. I loved the idea of having a librarian, quite eccentric librarian figure who goes on this very physical, demanding journey. So, you know, initially she's got absolutely no idea about anything. So, but she's still pretty gutsy, and she's the whole point. It's a quest story also in a way. You know, the whole point of her going up north, down south rather, is to get pharmaceutical drugs for her sister who's got TB.
That's right. And sorry, you carry on.
yeah, I was just going to say, and I've created this character who's based at the old Hooker Lodge, who has stockpiled a whole lot of pharmaceuticals from before the crash. So that's where they're all heading for Hooker Lodge.
And it's interesting Yeah, it's Te Huka Lodge, yeah. And it's interesting to me that I hadn't actually picked up on the fact that Eckers had a period in Africa, because the only book which Ruth takes with her is The Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, which is the story, or it's the main character, Marlowe, is describing his journey up the Congo River in Africa. So I find that really interesting, and I just wonder if you want to talk a wee bit more about why Ruth took that book and the parallels with this journey.
Yeah, I've always really loved Heart of Darkness, and it's one of my sort of the key books in my life. And as soon as I knew I was writing a story set on the river, I had to use Heart of Darkness in some way. And in Heart of Darkness, I've got a few parallels to the book happening in my book. And one is that in Heart of Darkness, Marlowe is traveling up this river towards this strange, mad character called Kurtz. And so that's pretty much what Ruth is doing. She's traveling towards Nelson, who ends up being, you know, a little bit off his head, just like Kurtz turned out to be.
Absolutely.
For different reasons.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's a book, I mean, it has some very interesting turns, which was the reason I read it in 24 hours, because it's a very fulfilling read, and we won't give anything away from the ending of the book. I've just another aspect of the book, we meet up along the way. I know that one thing that Conrad was interested in is the concept that there's so little difference between civilized people and savages. And to me, that really rang true. And I found it fascinating in this time of this pandemic to read a story where we can see this breakdown of society happening so quickly.
Yeah, I agree. It brings out the best and worst in people, you know,
Absolutely.
like people fighting in the supermarket aisles for water or toilet paper or whatever. And yeah, I definitely have tried to touch on that in my book. I've got these various little communities, river communities, that my characters, you know, interact with. And for instance, probably the example you're thinking of is when they get to one settlement in particular where they've got a doctor locked up. So this character, who I called Cynthia, who's this very angry young woman doctor, female doctor, and because doctors are tremendously valued, you know, I mean now obviously, but you know, in terms of my book, they've got such high value that this community have actually put her under lock and key so that she won't run away, that she can stay with them and fix their illnesses and look after their pregnant women. So we have got extremes like that. And yeah, as you know, they do rescue Cynthia. So, and she continues on to the lodge with them, along with her daughter Lizzie.
Yeah, yeah. And it really is a quest story. The other thing that I'm interested to talk to you about is the fact that this is your 7th novel. I had no idea that you've actually written 7 novels. And let me just see this list here. 7 novels, 2 non-fictions, 2 collections, 3 young adult novels, and 8 children's novels. Oh my goodness, Tina! You know, that is just such an incredible output for a writer.
Yeah,
that's just amazing.
I like to keep busy. So, and I was just thinking this morning how, you know, I was thinking, well, how is my life different now that we're in lockdown to what I normally live like? And actually it's not all that different, because I'm writing another book, you know, I'm learning a language. I was already learning Portuguese before the lockdown, so I'm doing that. And I, you know, I tutor, and as you know, I mentor people, so in their own writing, and help other people with their manuscripts. So that's all. It's just pretty much what I do.
So what is your writing schedule? How do you schedule your writing into your day?
Oh, I like to get to my book first thing in the morning, really, as much as I can, when my brain is still fresh. But having said that, it's good to be flexible. So sometimes I'll write at other times as well, and I like to work on a first draft, get a first draft down, and then I put that away, and then I go back to it. I've got a first draft sitting here on my desk at the moment, another YA, and I've started another story. So, I sort of often juggle between two projects at the same time.
Yeah, that's incredible. Just getting back to your book, I was just thinking about Ruth, the protagonist, and there's a really interesting and quite unusual character arc for that character. Maybe what we should do, because we don't want to give away what a character's like at the end, but I mean, at the beginning, she lives in a bubble only with her sister, basically in lockdown in Avondale in a large house up a long driveway. Yep. And their lockdown is not because of a virus, it's because of crime and the level that society has degenerated to. And as we go through the story, we hear backstory about her life as a sort of a hapless and a librarian who has, well, no, she's not really hapless. It's really Selwyn who's hapless, isn't it, really, about the loves of her life. Do you want to just give us a wee bit of background about Ruth and where she's at before this story really begins?
Yeah, during her river journey, she can't help but think back to, her two big relationships in her past. And one of them was with a colleague, fellow librarian called Selwyn. And he was a married man, and she had this terrific crush on him. So, they have a couple of moments in the stacks. And but she never gets very far with him. And there's a Christmas party, when they nearly sort of start kissing or something. And then halfway through her river trip, she actually bumps into Selwyn's wife for the first time. So, and that completely dashes any sort of romantic illusions she had about him. And, I like to think I've used these couple of relationships and her memories of them to sort of help us see that she has this these romantic ideals which have never been fulfilled. I mean, part of it on my part, I'm having fun, and I'm injecting humor into the story. But also, I also want to sort of explore more of the ephemeral nature of our lives. You can have these relationships, they may or may not work. And with Ruth, she reaches a point where she really she just lets go of the whole idea of Selwyn, so that in the end, she actually realizes, she thinks to herself, oh, so he's now like a little man dot in the back of her mind, so his importance has grown lesser as her journey goes on. Yes, so it's really part of her personal development.
And there's another relationship that she talks about, and also the birth and adoption of a child. I'm also really interested, again, going back to the title and the nature of her work as a librarian. Like her whole life and being is around collecting trivia from the year 2004. And yet when she sets out on this journey and what she's prepared to do to achieve her goal, I found that a really interesting, difference, really.
Yeah, I have a link. I have a link between the ephemera she's collecting now, as opposed to what she used to work on at the library, and the son that she adopted out when she was 16 or 17. So, and again, I think for her character, it's very much about coming to terms with what happened in the past and letting go of that baby. And she thinks a lot, it's coming up more during her journey. What happened to her son? Where is he now? And she tries to imagine. She's hoping that he's with people who are teaching him good survival skills. And I think it's part of her personal puzzle, you know, the jigsaw puzzle of her past, that she's also working that out.
And I love the river. It just is in the heart of darkness. You know, the Congo is probably really one of the characters of the book. I felt the river was one of the characters of the book, and we'll all recognize, you know, odd domains and odd little communities that we've all been to along the river. I'm just wondering, did you actually sail up the river? I've wondered if you'd actually had that experience.
What I have done, I do know the river quite well, different parts of it. Like I've either camped beside it, or I've whatever. But specifically for this book, I got out on 2 or 3 of the hydro lakes and paddled them on a canoe. Yeah. So just to see what things were like from the water, which is quite different than looking at it from the land.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I really loved this book, and I was all set in my diary of things to do was to come to your book launch in Auckland and get myself a copy of it and help celebrate it. And now none of those things can happen. But I understand that Cloud Ink Press are still able to, if people go on the Cloud Ink Press website, they're still able to order your book at this time.
Yeah, I believe so. Go into, I think it's www.cloudink.co.nz, and also the ebook will be up early next week. So go to Amazon.
I think it's already on demand on Amazon as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. So yes, it is available, and I really hope people will buy it and read it. And talking about books, Kirsty, you've had a success recently. Tell us about that.
I released my book called The Strength of Eggshells last October, and on the 19th of March, much like you, the media got no coverage of the fact that it won the New Zealand Book Lovers Award, and that's why I'm wanting to take people on a virtual, woolshed tour, because I'd really wanted to take that book back to rural New Zealand and share it in small places. And I think as authors, this is the way we can do that. We can virtually share our books. So maybe you'd like to come on another time and talk about another one of your books, because I just feel New Zealand books talk to New Zealand people. I loved reading your book. I loved reading about places I'd been to, but in such a different situation. To me, that was one of the sheer enjoyment of reading a good New Zealand book, is to be able to do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's what I really enjoyed about your book. And I really hope that you and I sometime, in the future can do some proper woolshed tours.
Absolutely.
Once we're in lockdown. Yeah, and take our books to the rural communities.
Let's make that a promise. I think maybe everyone's lives are going to change a bit post-virus, but wouldn't that be such a fun thing to do? Excellent. Let's make that happen.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.